My husband and family forced me to sign a prenup, unaware I was a multi-billionaire. She was cornered by the people who should have loved her most. Her husband and his family pushed her to the table, forcing her hand against her will. To them, she was powerless, a woman with no choice, no voice. But they had no idea what secret she carried within her silence. What do you think she was hiding? Sit back and journey with us into this unforgettable story of betrayal, greed, and a twist that no one saw coming. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe and let's know where you are watching the story from in the comments section. Sign here, Eleanor said, tapping the first page with a manicured nail. Our family has a name to protect. You're lucky we're letting you in. The room went still. The pen lay beside a crystal vase like a little sword. Olivia Bennet stared at the stack of paper, then at Daniel. He gave her that soft smile he wore in public, the one that said, "Trust me," without saying anything at all. "Mom," Daniel said lightly. "Let's not make it sound harsh." "It isn't harsh," Eleanor replied. "It's responsible." Phil, Daniel's younger brother, lounged on the arm of the sofa, thumbs moving over his phone. "Just sign, Olivia. It's standard for families like ours." "Families like ours," Eleanor echoed, pleased. Olivia swallowed. "This is a lot for a Tuesday night." "Call it rehearsal," Eleanor said. "You'll thank us later." Daniel slid closer on the couch. "It's just formality, baby. If you really love me, you'll sign." Olivia kept her eyes on him. A week before the wedding, he shrugged with a practiced laugh. The lawyer was slammed. You know how these things go. Phil snickered. Rich people problems. Olivia's mouth twitched. "I wouldn't know." Eleanor set the pen on top of the contract. "Now you will." Silence stretched thin. In the Carter living room, everything was perfect and staged. White candles that had never burned, silver frames in neat rows, a painting of a ship going somewhere important. Olivia had been here many times. She'd set the table, washed dishes, laughed at stories. Tonight the room felt like it was waiting to see what she was made of. She forced her voice to stay even. "Can I read it first?" "Of course," Eleanor said. "We value transparency." Phil leaned forward. "It says if anything happens, you don't get a cent. No claim on Carter assets, no support, no access to the house in Palm Grove. Pretty simple." "Phil," Daniel warned. "What? I'm helping." Eleanor pushed the top page toward Olivia. "And we'll need full financial disclosure from you, to avoid surprises." Olivia smoothed the paper with one hand. The words hummed in her head. Full disclosure. She thought of the other name on her other phone, the one only a handful of people used. She thought of the trust documents her father's lawyer kept in a vault. She thought of the small apartment she chose, the old car she kept, the quiet life she loved. She thought of spreadsheets and coffee, and a desk where no one knew that Bennett meant anything. She looked up at Daniel. "You could have told me sooner." He touched her wrist. "I didn't want to stress you." "You did," she said softly. He lowered his voice. "Olivia, I love you. This is just how my family does things." Phil muttered. "It's how smart families do things." "Phil," Eleanor snapped without looking at him. Olivia lifted the pen, set it back down. "What if I say no?" Eleanor's smile didn't touch her eyes. "Then we postpone. People will ask why. We will tell them the truth, that we tried to protect our son, and you refused." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Liv, come on. Don't make this a test." She let the word hang. "A test," she repeated. "Everyone does prenups now," he said. "My boss says only fools skip them." Phil grinned. "And Mom hasn't raised any fools." Eleanor sat straighter. "We built our name with care. We won't have it diluted by carelessness." Olivia turned the first page and read. The language was clean, expensive, certain. She understood contracts. She built models for a living, watched risk crawl across numbers like ants across sugar. She knew what paper could do, and what it couldn't. She knew that people use paper to sound brave when they're afraid. She looked up again. "Give me 10 minutes. Alone." Eleanor pursed her lips. "Do you need help understanding it?" "I'm a senior analyst," Olivia said, keeping her tone polite. "I read for a living." Phil laughed. "Spreadsheets." "Spreadsheets," Olivia agreed. Daniel gestured to the hall. "Guest rooms free." Olivia carried the stack down the hall. The door clicked behind her. She sat on the edge of the bed and let her eyes close for a count of 3. Then she read, line by line, clause by clause, looking for the knife inside the cake. No hidden blades, just a full neat lock on a box she had never asked to open. Her phone buzzed. A single message from a contact labeled counsel. "Always your choice. Trust secure. You lose nothing you own." She stared at the words, then flipped the phone face down. She pressed her fingers to her eyes until the color behind her lids changed. When she went back to the living room, she had smoothed her face into calm. Eleanor's smile returned. "Well?" Olivia sat. "I'll sign," she said. Daniel's shoulders dropped in relief. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. For a second, it almost felt like love. Eleanor slid a sticky flag to the line. "Here," and "here." Initial there. Olivia took the pen. Her hand shook once, then steadied. She wrote her name in clear strokes. Olivia. She dated it. She initialed where told. The pen scratched softly. The vase of roses threw a neat shadow across the table. Phil clapped twice, slow. Welcome to the big leagues. Daniel kissed her cheek. You won't regret this, he whispered. Eleanor stacked the pages like a dealer counting cards. Very good. Now we can celebrate. They didn't pour champagne. Eleanor poured tea. It seemed cleaner. To the Carters, she said. To the Carters, Phil echoed. Daniel lifted his cup. To us, he said to Olivia, eyes warm again. You and me. Us, she said. And let it sit there. Small talk followed. Because small talk is how people hide big moments. Eleanor asked about flower deliveries and seating charts. Phil bragged about a watch he wanted. An aunt arrived late and said, Olivia dear, where are you from again? As if from decided worth. Daniel told a story about his boss-loving family men. They promote guys who look settled, he said, laughing. Married, stable, traditional. Eleanor nodded, pleased. That's why we care, Olivia. Image matters. Olivia set her cup down. Does it matter more than kindness? Eleanor cocked her head. Kindness is private. Image is public. Phil grinned. Tweet that. Daniel chuckled like it was a joke and squeezed Olivia's knee under the table. Don't overthink it, he murmured. She looked at his hand, then at his face. Before they left, Eleanor walked Olivia to the door and leaned in, voice low. You're very practical, she said. That will suit our son. Just remember, our name has weight. You will carry it well if you listen. Listen to what? Olivia asked. To us, Eleanor said simply. Outside, the evening air cut clean through Olivia's coat. Daniel walked her to her car. Liv, he said. Thank you. My mother's old school. You know how she is. How are you? Olivia asked. He smiled like nothing was wrong. I'm happy. We're getting married. That's all that matters. Is it? She asked softly. He tucked a curl behind her ear. It is to me. She looked at him the way you look at a door to see if it's locked. I believe you want it to be, she said. You always read between the lines, he said, laughing. It's one of the things I love about you. Just try not to do it with my family. They're simple. What they say is what they mean. She thought of Eleanor's lucky we're letting you in. She thought of Phil's families like ours. She thought of the contract and the way the pen had waited like a test. Okay, she said. I'll try. He kissed her forehead. Quick and camera safe. I'll call you later. She watched him go back inside, the door closing behind him with a soft click, the kind that feels louder when you're alone. She sat in her car and let the quiet hold her. Her hands found the steering wheel and held on. Her phone buzzed. Rachel, her coworker. You vanished. Everything okay? Olivia typed. Family dinner. Long story. Tomorrow. Rachel. Coffee. 9 a.m. I'm buying. She smiled at the screen. A small real smile. She turned the ignition, then stopped. She took the prenup copy from her bag and laid it across her lap. She read the first line again. This agreement is made in the interest of protecting the Carter family and name. Her father's voice surfaced from a memory. Paper shows character. Live. Watch how people behave around signatures. She had watched. She had learned. Daniel hadn't stormed. He hadn't threatened. He'd done something quieter. He'd handed her a choice and asked her to prove love by making it easy for him. Eleanor hadn't begged. She'd wrapped control in courtesy. Phil hadn't hidden contempt. He'd made it casual. Olivia traced the edge of the page with her nail. She thought of the life she chose. A one-bedroom near the river, a desk by the window, a title on a badge that didn't scare anyone. She thought of the life she could have claimed any day in a dozen countries with a dozen doors that would open before she knocked. She thought of how good Daniel had been at the beginning, and how easy it had been to love the man who danced on sidewalks and said she was real. She folded the papers, slid them back into her bag, and set both hands on the wheel. The decision she'd made in the living room still sat in her chest like a stone that fit. She had signed. Not because she was small, but because she wanted to see clearly. She didn't need to teach them a lesson tonight. Time would do that for her. Alone in the car, she let herself say the thing no one in that house would understand. She spoke it softly, to the dark glass and the empty passenger seat, to the life she kept hidden under a simple coat. You think this paper protects you? Olivia whispered. One day you'll learn who really needed protection. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give a future to children and women who have been abused all over the world. Motivate us by subscribing and turning on your notification bell so you never miss a story that matters. Also, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and how did this story speak to you? The first weeks of marriage looked fine from the outside. Olivia wore a ring, Daniel wore a smile, and Eleanor told neighbors, my son married well. At dinners, the Carters praised Olivia's cooking, her quiet manners, her humility. To anyone looking in, it was a perfect match. Inside, the shine cracked fast. One morning, Olivia set 2 mugs of coffee on the table before heading to work. She was still adjusting her blazer when Daniel came in. He eyed her clothes, then the modest leather bag she carried. Big day? He asked, pouring sugar into his cup. Quarterly review, Olivia said. I'll probably stay late. Daniel smirked. Don't work too hard. Your paycheck can't even buy my cufflinks. He tapped the silver ones at his wrist with a laugh. Olivia paused. That wasn't kind. He kissed her cheek anyway. Relax. It's a joke. Lighten up. She forced a small smile, but something in her chest tightened.
At Sunday dinner with the Carters, Eleanor leaned across the table. You know, Olivia, we're very generous. Most girls would give anything to marry into our name. You're lucky Daniel chose you. Phil chuckled. Yeah, he could have done better. Daniel didn't defend her. He only sipped his wine. Don't tease her too much, he said, as if it was all harmless fun. Olivia lowered her eyes to her plate. I'm grateful, she said softly. The words tasted bitter, but she swallowed them because no one else in the room cared how they landed. The humiliations piled slowly, like drops filling a glass. At work dinners, Daniel would brag to his colleagues. The firm loves family men. You look stable, serious. That's why I married. He patted Olivia's hand like a prop. They promote guys with wives. Olivia smiled for the table, but her stomach burned. Later when she asked, do you mean that? He shrugged. It's true, he said. Marriage is an asset. And me? She asked quietly. He gave her a dismissive grin. You're part of the package. The first time she suspected he was cheating, it was perfume. A sweet floral note clinging to his shirt. New cologne? She asked as he hung his jacket. He laughed. Client's hug. It's part of the job.
But the second time she caught lipstick faint on his collar. She didn't ask. She didn't have to. The third time she found a message flashing on his phone while he showered. Can't wait to see you tonight. She won't suspect a thing. When he came out, towel around his waist, she held the phone up. Who's Claire? She asked. Daniel froze, then smirked. You shouldn't snoop. Are you cheating? She whispered. He shrugged as if it didn't matter. Men like me have options. You should be grateful I kept you. The words cut so deep she forgot how to breathe. You married me, she said. I thought you loved me. He wrapped the towel tighter, unfazed. I love the idea of us. You're respectable. You make me look good. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself not to cry in front of him. So I'm just a cover? He kissed her forehead, almost mocking. Don't be dramatic. You'll get used to it. That night, Olivia lay awake staring at the ceiling. She remembered her father's advice. People show you who they are when they think you can't leave. The next day, she bought a small notebook. At first, she told herself it was just a process, but slowly, it became a record. Dates, times, cruel words, strange perfumes, dinner comments. She screenshot texts when Daniel left his phone unattended. She saved voice messages, backing them up in hidden folders. She didn't know why, but she knew she needed to keep proof. Weeks later, at another Carter dinner, the insults sharpened. Eleanor set down her fork. Olivia, you're still working those little numbers at your desk, aren't you? Yes, Olivia said evenly. Good, Eleanor replied. It's charming, really. But remember, Daniel provides the real life here. Don't overstep. Phil laughed. Exactly. Don't start thinking you're the breadwinner. Daniel smiled at his family, then turned to Olivia. Don't be offended, Liv. They're proud of me. That's all. Olivia's hand trembled under the table. She kept her voice soft. I never claimed otherwise. Later, as they drove home, she whispered, Why don't you ever defend me? Daniel kept his eyes on the road. Because you make things worse when you're sensitive. Learn to laugh with them. That's what family does. Olivia pressed her lips together, tears sliding silently down her face. He didn't notice. At work, she kept her head down. No one at her firm knew what she endured at home. They saw a quiet woman who worked late, who delivered reports on time, who smiled when thanked. None of them guessed she went home to whispers of lucky and jokes about cufflinks. One evening, she attended a firm gala with Daniel. He drank too much, laughing with colleagues, introducing her like a business card. This is my wife, he boomed. Beautiful, right? I married her for stability. Firms love that. The table laughed. Olivia's cheeks burned. She smiled tightly, holding her glass like it could steady her. On the way home, she asked, Did you have to say that? Daniel waved his hand. It's a joke. Don't take everything so seriously. It humiliates me, she said softly. You're too sensitive, he replied. Lighten up. The next night, he didn't come home. He didn't come home the night after either. When he finally returned, shirt wrinkled, hair smelling of perfume again, Olivia asked, Where were you? He kissed her cheek and said, Networking. She went into the bedroom, closed the door, and wrote the date in her notebook. It was late on a Thursday when the truth burned into her ears. Olivia had worked late herself and came home earlier than Daniel expected. As she walked through the front door, she heard laughter echoing down the hall. His voice, carefree. She froze, the sound of it slicing her chest. She crept closer, just enough to hear. She's nothing, Daniel said, chuckling. Just a boring wife. I only married her so the firm would take me seriously. A woman's voice giggled in response. So why keep her at all? That's enough. She'll never leave. Olivia pressed her hand to her mouth to stop a cry from escaping. She stepped back slowly, each footfall heavy as stone. The walls of the house seemed to tilt, the air suddenly thin. In the quiet of her room, she sat on the edge of the bed, notebook open in her lap, pen shaking in her hand. She wrote down his words, word for word, sealing them on paper like scars. Her heart broke in silence. but her eyes no longer looked at him the same. The office smelled faintly of leather and paper, the kind of place built to hold secrets. Olivia sat across from David Lane, her father's old lawyer, hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She had spent weeks gathering courage, and now that she was here, the words almost caught in her throat. "David," she began quietly, "I need to know, am I trapped?" He leaned back, studying her face the way he always did before answering, patient and calm. "What makes you say that?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Daniel's family forced me into a prenup. His mother called it protection, said their name was worth more than anything I could bring. They think I should be grateful." David slid a folder across the desk. "Olivia, do you know what that prenup actually did?" Her eyes dropped to the folder, still closed. "It locked me out of everything. Their homes, their accounts, their so-called legacy. It was their way of telling me I didn't belong." David shook his head, his lips twitching with something between pity and amusement. "No. What it did was wall you off from their scraps. It doesn't touch you, Olivia. It never could." She frowned. "I don't understand." He opened the folder, revealing neat columns of shares, subsidiaries, and company seals. "Because you, Olivia Bennett, are the sole heir of Bennett Global Holdings. Every share, every trust, every controlling interest your father built, it belongs to you, including Carter and Rowe, where your husband struts around like a peacock. You don't just have a seat at the table, you own the table." The room seemed to tilt. She stared at the documents, the figures almost unreal. She had hidden from this her whole adult life, living modestly, working hard in her own right, choosing to be ordinary because she wanted love without the shadow of money. But now the truth sat in front of her, undeniable. "The prenup doesn't touch any of this?" she whispered. "Not a single cent," David replied firmly. "They thought they were protecting themselves from a poor girl who might take advantage. All they did was shield you from their greed." Her lips parted, but no words came. She pressed her fingers against her mouth, blinking back a rush of emotions. Relief, rage, sadness. David leaned forward. "The question is, Olivia, what do you want to do with this?" She lowered her hand and exhaled slowly. "I want them to see who they really are, and I want to stop hiding who I am. Then we'll proceed carefully," he said, quietly. "Their own arrogance will do half the work for us." That night, Daniel was at his mother's house. Olivia wasn't invited. He sat with his family at the long dining table, glass in hand, smirk plastered across his face. "She's sulking again," he said casually. "Stayed late at work. She'll come around. She always does." Eleanor sniffed, slicing into her chicken. "She should be grateful. We've carried her long enough. No name, no fortune, and she got into this family. That's more than she deserves." Phil laughed. "Without you, she's nothing. You did her a favor marrying her." Daniel leaned back with satisfaction. "She'll never leave. She needs us. That's the beauty of it." Eleanor smiled thinly. "And when you're promoted, people will see the truth. The Carters are rising." They didn't notice the sideways glances in the room. A cousin muttering, "People are talking." An uncle clearing his throat when Eleanor boasted too loudly. Whispers had already begun to spread in the community. At the club, an acquaintance leaned close to Eleanor. "I heard your son's wife was left out in the cold after an argument." Surely not true. At the grocery store, a woman muttered within Olivia's hearing, "Such a shame, treating your wife's family like that." At a dinner, Daniel's own colleague shifted uncomfortably when he joked, "Married men climb faster. HR loves family photos on desks." The laugh was brittle. The silence afterward louder than his boast. The cracks were forming, even if the Carters couldn't see them. Olivia could. She saw everything. Late at night, she sat at her modest desk, the glow of her laptop lighting her face. She thought of all the times Daniel had mocked her paycheck, sneered at her work, told her she should be grateful for his family name. She thought of Eleanor's cold eyes, Phil's smirk. She thought of her father's voice echoing from memory. "Paper shows character, Olivia. Watch how people behave when they think no one's watching." She whispered into the quiet, "They think this paper protects them. They have no idea." The next morning she called David. "I'm ready," she said. "Ready for what?" "For them to see who's really at the head of the table." The plan took shape with ruthless elegance. Olivia arranged a lavish corporate dinner under Daniel's name. The reason? To celebrate his promotion. Invitations were printed on heavy cardstock, embossed in gold. The guest list sparkled with executives, shareholders, board members, and of course the Carter family. When Eleanor saw the invitations, she preened. "Finally people will see our family's worth." Daniel puffed his chest. "This will cement my reputation. Everyone will know the Carters are rising." Phil grinned. "Better make sure Olivia doesn't wear anything that steals the spotlight." Eleanor chuckled. "She knows her place." Olivia simply smiled. "Don't worry, I'll make sure it's perfect." And she did. The night of the dinner, the ballroom glowed like a jewel. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in gold. Tables sparkled with polished silver and glass. Waiters moved gracefully, pouring wine, setting plates. Eleanor floated from group to group, introducing herself as though she owned the air. Our family has worked hard, she said proudly. This is what tradition looks like. Daniel basked in the attention, clapping executives on the back. Marriage was the smartest move I made, he said with a grin. Firms love stability, promotions follow family men. He pulled Olivia close, patting her hand like she was an accessory. My wife understands her role. She smiled, soft and unreadable. Inside, her heart beat steady as a drum. At last, the CEO of Carter & Rowe stepped onto the stage. The chatter died down. He was tall, silver-haired, his presence commanding. He tapped the microphone, and the room stilled. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Tonight we celebrate growth, promotions, partnerships that strengthen us. Daniel straightened his tie, his smile stretched wider. Eleanor adjusted her pearls, glowing with pride. Phil leaned forward, phone in hand, ready to capture his brother's moment. The CEO continued. But before we raise a glass for individual success, we must honor the foundation that makes this company possible. Behind every strong firm is a hand that steadies it, unseen but vital. Daniel whispered to his mother, "This is it, he's building to me." Eleanor squeezed his arm. The CEO smiled. "Tonight we recognize our principal shareholder, the true anchor of Carter & Rowe, Olivia Bennett." For a heartbeat the room went silent. Daniel's glass slipped, red wine spilling across his cuff. Eleanor's pearls rattled against her collarbone. Phil's jaw dropped, his phone slipping from his fingers. And Olivia rose, calm and composed, every eye in the ballroom following her. The applause began, rolling through the room like thunder. Daniel stared at her in shock, realizing in that instant, he had never known the woman he thought he owned. The ballroom air was thick with surprise. Forks clinked against china, as whispers darted across the tables. Olivia Bennett. The name rolled through the crowd like a secret suddenly shouted. Cameras flashed, executives leaned forward, and the Carters froze like portraits painted in shock. Daniel blinked hard, his smile crumbling into something raw. Eleanor's hand trembled against her pearls, but she recovered fast, straightening her shoulders. She sneered across the room, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Money can't give you class, Olivia. You can buy all the shares you want, but you'll never be a Carter." The insult drifted into silence, but Olivia didn't flinch. She rose slowly, every movement measured, and stepped toward the podium. The CEO glanced at her, then stepped aside without hesitation. All eyes locked on her as she lifted the microphone. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of a woman who had been broken and had rebuilt herself from the shards. "Class," she said softly, "isn't about names or pearls. It's about how you treat people when you think no one is watching." Gasps rippled. Eleanor's face darkened. Daniel shifted in his chair, his cuff still wet from the spilled wine, his hands restless on the table. Olivia nodded to the AV team waiting discreetly at the back. The lights dimmed, and the first screen lit up behind her. It was a message, blown large for everyone to see. "Can't wait to see you tonight." She won't suspect a thing. The sender's name glared. "Claire." Murmurs erupted. A second slide appeared. Daniel's reply. "Don't worry, she's boring. Just a wife on paper." Daniel's chair screeched as he stood. "This is out of context," he shouted, his face pale. Olivia didn't look at him. Her hand lifted slightly. Another slide. A photo of Daniel at a hotel bar. Arm around a woman not his wife. Time-stamped and dated. Another. Receipts filed under client meetings that matched hotel stays. Another. Audio played over the speakers. Daniel's voice from a bar, laughing. "She's nothing, just a boring wife. I only married her for the firm." The ballroom erupted with shocked voices. Some gasped, some whispered, others shook their heads in disgust. Eleanor shot up, her voice trembling with rage. "This is manipulation, lies." The CEO's voice cut through like steel. "We verify our evidence before it's shown in this room, Mrs. Carter. Sit down." Eleanor sank back, her face red. Phil covered his mouth with his hand, too stunned to speak. Daniel stumbled forward, hand outstretched. "Olivia, listen to me. This is between us. You didn't need to." She finally turned, meeting his eyes. Her calmness was more terrifying than any shout. "Between us. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Your family called me lucky to have your name, when it was my name, my work, my life carrying you. You laughed at me when you thought I couldn't hear. You called me nothing." Daniel's throat bobbed. "I was wrong. I was stupid. Baby, please." Executives stood from their tables, one by one, speaking in low, firm voices. "This behavior cannot be tolerated. Unfit for leadership. The board will meet immediately." The CEO didn't wait for a vote. Effective immediately. Daniel Carter's promotion is revoked. His position will be reviewed by the disciplinary committee. The words landed like a hammer. Eleanor clutched Daniel's arm. "Do something," she hissed. But Daniel's power was gone. Executives turned away. Former friends avoided his eyes. Even Claire, his mistress, slipped quietly out of the side door, vanishing as though she had never existed. Daniel's knees buckled. He dropped in front of Olivia, hands clasped, tears streaking his face. "Please, I was a fool. Don't leave me. You're my wife. We can fix this." The room held its breath. Cameras caught the image. Daniel Carter, once arrogant and smug, reduced to a pleading figure at his wife's feet. Olivia looked down at him, her eyes wet but unyielding. Her voice was steady, every word clear. "I gave you love when you thought I had nothing.
You gave me humiliation. Now you get nothing from me. Daniel's hands fell. He looked around wildly, but no one came to help. Security stepped forward, firm and silent. This way, Mr. Carter. As they pulled him up, he shouted over his shoulder, voice breaking. Olivia, please, don't do this. We can start again. She turned away. The applause began slowly, not celebratory, but respectful. A recognition of truth revealed. Executives nodded toward Olivia. Investors murmured approval, and the CEO raised his glass. To integrity, he said simply. Olivia stood tall at the podium, the spotlight soft on her face. She lifted her chin and spoke to the room, but her voice carried far beyond the chandeliers. True love is not a contract, not a condition, not a performance. It proves itself in respect, in loyalty, and in honesty. When betrayal is dressed as love, truth unmasks it, and justice follows. The room was silent for a long moment, the weight of her words sinking in. Then came the applause again, this time louder, echoing off the high ceilings. Later, as the guests filed out, the whispers shifted, no longer about the Carters' pride, but about Olivia Bennet's strength. Eleanor stormed out, humiliated, her head low for the first time in her life. Thag trailed behind, his swagger gone. Olivia stayed behind for a moment, standing in the quiet ballroom. As staff cleared glasses, she let herself breathe, finally, deeply. The chains Daniel and his family had wrapped around her had broken, not with fury, but with truth. She looked out at the empty tables and whispered softly, a promise to herself, never again. And when she walked out of the ballroom, she didn't look back.